What is up, guys? What is up? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Shout out in the house to Ninja Nuts. Joseph, what's up? Abraham Young, what's good, guys? Chris Killens, what's up? So, there is a chance here that here shortly I might be joined by either Law or James. Just scheduling conflict. Today's been kind of a crazy day, so I don't know for sure on that one yet. But in case they are available, they will jump on with us here as we preview the Cowboys and Seattle Seahawks. Week 3, I think it's a 3:25 kick. So I'm looking forward to that. Probably the only game on AFN too. Of course, Browns and Jets. Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's not a great Thursday night football game. So I felt relatively confident that there would be some people to tune in for the show here. But Thursday is my normal night for these anyway. So thank you guys for joining. So we got some good Cowboys talk here for you today. Now, let me see here. Almost forgot about Facebook. Whoops. And now we're good on Facebook as well. What's up, guys? All right. So, let's kick things off with some injury report talk here. Russell's going to run for his life. Law, James, DDP. Yeah, I think the Cowboys' defensive line is definitely a good strength here for this game because Seattle has given up the most sacks through 2 weeks now. If you look at it from a technique perspective, I think that they've been sloppy. I don't think that they are bad, but they've played really bad. So assuming they don't magically fix the Rubik's Cube of that offensive line in between now and Sunday, I'm going to say the Cowboys' defensive line, really its front seven as a whole, is probably going to feast. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. But let's kick off with some of this injury report talk here. Now, the Cowboys, obviously, several faces we do know that aren't going to be going anywhere from that list for a while. Travis Frederick. We do have some additional guys coming back. We're hopeful that we can get Xavier Woods back this week. He was a limited participant both Wednesday and Thursday. Full participant, Daniel Ross. That's another guy to get back. Sean Lee, light participant. Again, his cramps, which I really think is just a hamstring, and let's be honest with Sean Lee, it probably is some kind of hamstring tweak. Those really plague his career, so something to keep an eye on there. Another guy coming back, and this was one of the guys I mentioned in my article for Dallas Sports Fanatic earlier this week. We also are getting back Dayton Jones. I know that's not like a blow you away name or anything like that, but when I listed about the reserves, as good as this defense has been, the reserves coming in ahead of time, we're going to have Randy Gregory should be back from his concussion this week. And after 2 more games, we're going to have David Irving coming back. Dayton Jones is there, and Xavier Woods should also hopefully be back this game as well. So you got, as good as this defense has been through the first 2 weeks, and again, it's a small sample size, right? Just 2 weeks. But as good as they've been through the first 2 weeks, we've got a cavalry coming. And again, Dayton Jones is nothing that'll blow you away, but that's another solid guy in your rotation there who can make some plays. He was shown out a little bit in camp before he tweaked his knee. So, no, I like him, D. Jones. There you go. So, yeah, the Cowboys have some reserves coming in, and that's going to be very beneficial to them. Randy Gregory, full participant this week. Kayvon Frazier, full participant. Malik Collins still has not practiced, so that's one thing of note there. Malik Collins still, he tweaked his knee. I think he sprained his MCL during the game. Here's the thing, man. When Malik Collins is healthy, that is a bad dude. But for everyone who talks about Sean Lee not being able to stay healthy, good God, man. Malik Collins cannot stay healthy. And it's always like an ankle, a foot, or something like that. And it's a shame for him because it's going to hold him back. A knee now in this latest case. So, I don't know. I don't bank on Malik Collins being available. Maybe he will be. But I just mean moving forward. Like, he's had so many injuries that I start to look at it and say to myself, what's up, Gle? That is not what I say to myself. Well, I say it right now, but also to you. When I look at Malik Collins, I view it as I don't feel like I can ever bank on him being healthy and available. If he is there, I assume he'll be pretty good. But it's hard to say. He was one of the sacks of Cam Newton in week 1. So, interesting there. what he can bring to the table if healthy and if available. The problem is getting him there. Maybe that's something the Cowboys need to look at, in the next draft, is still trying to find a defensive tackle they feel like they can really trust, because I don't think that even though from a talent perspective, David Irving is a guy they can trust, I don't think David Irving is received the same way in the locker room as a Randy Gregory is, because guys have reached out to Randy Gregory within the team, and it sounds like he's been receptive to that help. And it seems like whenever they tried to do that with David Irving, he was still kind of wishy-washy, not always interested in their help. And that's kind of led to a feeling of apathy where it's like, look, I tried to help. I don't know what to tell you, man. So that's something to keep in mind. Cowboys might need to look defensive tackle not just in the next draft, not just because of the David Irving situation, but also Malik Collins' health. Something to think about. Kayvon Frazier, full participant, and added today to the injury report for a ankle. Cole Beasley was a light participant. Cole Beasley, man, I think Cole Beasley's been pretty solid for Dak thus far. I know he didn't have a huge impact in the game for Dallas this past week, but what do you have? 7 catches week 1. I think overall Dak has completed 9 of 11 targets of Cole Beasley so far, something like that. That's pretty solid right there, and that's gonna translate as you need it to. Let's see here. Check in on the Facebook. What's up, guys? Shout out. What's up? Here's something else interesting to consider. Now, obviously, for the Seahawks side, the only notable name I'm going to mention on their injury report, Doug Baldwin, is out. So that's something that could be beneficial as well. Ninja Nuts, good call. DDP would agree on looking for a defensive tackle in the next draft. Yeah, I think so as well. Yes, Bryce Butler. That was one of the topics I was going to get to as well. So the Cowboys re-signed Bryce Butler earlier this week. He's back with the team practicing. How do I feel about it? Well, as soon as this floated out there as a possibility, like before they even clarified he was coming in as part of like an open workout kind of thing with a bunch of free agents off the street, as soon as I heard about it, I was like, I like the move for Dallas. I do. Now, do I like it because I don't feel super strong about our receiving core as is right now? Admittedly, yes. But I do look at it and say, well, if there's one guy Dak ever had rapport with throwing the ball down the field, and when I say throwing the ball down the field, I'm not talking about like just his big plays. Like technically Zeke has Dak has 3 completions in his career for touchdowns of more than 64 yards. 64 yards or more. We just had the one to Tavon Austin. We have a 70-yarder to Zeke and an 83-yarder to Zeke. Now, what clue do you get from those last 2 I just mentioned, which were technically the first 2 on the list? Both of them were checkdowns that Zeke took the distance. Dak's furthest touchdown pass of his career as far as ball traveling through the air prior to the 64-yarder with Tavon Austin, he had a pair of 50-yarders with Des Bryant. Just under that, he had, I think, 2 or 3 completions with Bryce Butler that were also in that like 47 to 49 range. So if there's one guy Dak has had a little bit of rapport with throwing the ball down the field, it has been Bryce Butler. Think of the Arizona game last year, coincidentally week 3. So in that regard, I like the move for Dallas, but here's kind of the sobering side to look at for that move as well. Setting aside all the crap Bryce Butler said on, what was it, Undisputed or whatever in the offseason, talking about how he's good enough to be a number 1 in Dallas, but wasn't given the chance, wouldn't come back unless he was promised the starting job, better than Dez, something like that. Put all that aside, because that's just talk. That's a dude knowing he's a free agent and trying to sell himself to other teams. Didn't really work. I mean, he wound up in Arizona on a 1-year deal, got cut. I think he got picked up by someone else and cut. So it hasn't worked out for him in that regard. But here's the sobering thought. Aside from that little detail, just that he's been cut twice recently and that he was a free agent available off the street. When he was here and at his best, he was the, 4th receiver on the field? Like, Dez was drawing attention. Beasley was drawing attention. Hell, start of last year when he had that Arizona game, for instance, T. Will might have even been drawing a little bit of attention. So he wasn't getting top-tier corners to guard him. And if you look at his production when Dez was out in 2016 with his knee injury where he missed like 4 or 5 weeks, it was another kind of mixed bag. He made some plays here and there. He had a fantastic play at Green Bay that year, and it just didn't translate in the same way. So his numbers don't project out like a number one receiver, but I don't think Dallas is asking him to be a number one receiver. I think they're looking at it and saying Dak had chemistry with him. He's free. He's cheap. And he's a 6'3" receiver. Our tallest receiver other than him is 6'1", and we kind of stretch his height because I think Allen Hurns is really more like 6 foot. So in that regard, I think you have to go that way. Defense wins games. I say defensive tackle, tight end, offensive tackle, wide receiver. Ninja Nuts asks, no center. Travis might never be the same. On the Travis front, I actually don't think that's the case. Everything I've heard about Guillain-Barré syndrome is that he will make a full recovery. The thing for Dallas here is to make sure they give him the time to fully heal. Because if they bring him back too early, the strain can basically restart the process. But it is something that once you heal, once you fully recover, it's done. Like, you are highly unlikely to ever deal with another bout of it in your lifetime. It's just a weird occurrence, and I guess your body kind of adjusts and moves on from it. So, hard to say, but something worth looking at there. Do I still look at a center? If I do, it's certainly not in the top of the draft because I think Travis Frederick will be fine, honestly. But that's just my take based on everything I've read and heard. Marcelo B, go Cowboys. Bryce is fine. Bryce Butler. Yeah. Bryce Butler is a nice signing. Like I said, he doesn't really move the needle for me a whole lot, but I still look at him and say, not bad, considering what was out there. And to be clear, I know people are saying, Josh Gordon was out there. Man, Dallas has enough drama right now with regard to substance abuse stuff and all that. David Irving's out for it. Randy Gregory has had his trials and tribulations. Josh Gordon's in that same boat, man. Another offense, a single offense. He's done. And Dallas looks at it and they're like, do we want to bring this guy in between week 2 and 3 and try and plug him in immediately? Or would it be more ideal had we had a situation where we could bring him in the offseason, kind of get him ingratiated into the situation, and kind of build him through camp and all of that? That's what would have been ideal. If this had happened in the offseason, I fully believe Dallas would have gone balls out effectively to get him. But it happened in the middle of the season, and I think that, for the most part, scared him away. So he winds up in New England for a conditional 5th-round pick. If he doesn't play at least 10 games, New England gets back a late-round pick. It's not a bad price, and if he's on the field, which that's the problem, he's never on the field, he is probably one of the 10 best receivers in the league. So I would have loved it from a talent perspective. If there's anything that adds more drama to the Cowboys, it would have been what's going to happen with Gordon and will he actually be able to stay on the field. Takes like a year to get sensation and strength. So that part depends on how far along he was before he started treatment. And indications are that he was pretty early on in the process. Like, he was just at the part where he was having little bits of numbness into his fingers and like toes. So it doesn't sound like, it's not like his hands were fully numb or his feet and all of that. Now, he has lost strength. He'll have to work to get that back. But everything that he has said in everything he said in media interviews and stuff like that suggests that they caught it pretty early, and maybe that'll work to his benefit in that regard. My annoying cat is trying to headbutt his way into my office. And not cool, cat. Not cool at all. At all. So, so Bryce Butler, I like to pick up for them. It's just a matter of getting him worked back into the offense. And honestly, it is weird that they have 7 receivers on the team now, because that's a lot of receivers to keep. And then the guy they cut for him, they don't cut another receiver. They don't cut T. Will. I've said for a while that the thing about T. Will is that he's going to cost $7.5 million to cut this year versus $4 million to just pay him. And then in the offseason, that's not the deal at all. It's dollar for dollar a push, so you might as well cut him. But man, oh man, do I look at it and say, I would have rather cut T. Will. Dallas has a lot of cap. They're not hurting for cap. And for that reason, I would have rather cut him than Tyree Robinson. I think a promising young safety, at least as a special teams player, if not a reserve player. But they made the decision they made. So my feeling with Dallas heading into Seattle is that I think that Seattle opens, I think, as a 1.5-point favorite, despite being 0-2 and staring 0-3 in the face. I mean, let's be real. As I said earlier, Seattle has given up the most sacks in the league. I believe, is it 12 through the first 2 weeks? I know they gave up 6 just this last game to Chicago, and I know that Chicago is the only team ahead of Dallas as a defense in terms of sacks. Dallas is at 9, Chicago is at 10. And really, Dallas would be tied right there with them, but Cam Newton is so freaking big that one of the times D-Law effectively sacked him in the Carolina game, he fell forward and the ball just reached back to the line of scrimmage to make it basically a run for no gain. So I look at it and I say, there's no one on Seattle's offense that really scares me. You've got the injury with Baldwin. I think their offensive line, at least fundamentally, is in shambles. And I look at their defense. They've still got like Bobby Wagner. That's not bad. And they got Earl Thomas patrolling the back. Dallas, for that first play at least of last week, Dallas was able to pick on the Giant safety. It wasn't Landon Collins, by the way. He basically plays up front like a linebacker. So they were able to pick on them in the first snap of that game. I don't think you're going to have that case here because you're going to have Earl patrolling the back end of the defense. Now, if Earl really wants to set up his move into Dallas, he should just give like a convoy escort for every Cowboy receiver to the end zone. Just go make it full WWE drama and just have him basically, heel turn on the Seahawks defense and just start escorting in Cowboy players, blocking for the Cowboy wide receivers and running backs running into the end zone. That'd be funny. Be chaos, but it would be funny to see. So, yeah, you're not going to be able to take a lot of deep shots at Earl. And I look at it as the Seattle defensive front is still going to be pretty stout. Maybe not as stout as years past. Again, it's not as good of a defense, not as good of a team as they have been. But my gut tells me this is a Dallas win. I think Dallas, because their season died last year hosting Seattle. Now, Seattle is better at home, as Marcelo mentions. They are better at home, the 12th man and everything, and this is their home opener. So I think that's part of also what factored into the rumors around Labor Day of whether or not Dallas would be able to trade for Earl Thomas. I think they also looked at it and said, hey, man, if we had made this deal back at the draft, we would have been fine with our home opener having Earl on the other side because we would have had time to adapt to it. But when it got to like Labor Day, they're like, no, man. I think we want to open our season in front of our fans and have Earl on the other sideline? Hell no. So here's what I point to in that regard. There could be precedent for this deal to still open up potentially after this game passes. If you look at last year, there was a matchup between the Seattle Seahawks, coincidence, versus the Houston Texans at Houston. The Texans had a offensive lineman, what was his name? Dwayne? I can't remember his name. They had an offensive lineman who was holding out and wanted a new deal, and what they ended up doing was they activated him for the game. He played against Seattle, and then after the game, that was the 41-38 classic between Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson. And then after the game, like literally the same day, the deal and paperwork was submitted for the trade to trade that lineman to Seattle. So maybe there's something like that here, where after Dallas plays Seattle, they're like, okay, now, especially if Dallas wins, if Seattle falls to 0-3, there's not a lot of hope for them playoff picture-wise, just historically, statistically speaking. So that could be something that opens up that regard as well, where they suddenly look at it and say, hey, let's talk about that. A second rounder, that might actually sound all right. And another thing that people are going to talk about, for this regard is if you're Dallas, you've only played Jordan Lewis one snap so far in 2 games. Do you consider throwing him in that deal as well for Earl? if you trade Jordan Lewis, you don't need to cut anybody. As for who, if they don't include a player, for the record, I love Jordan Lewis. I want him to get more snaps. I'm frustrated he's not getting more opportunity. But if you're not trading Jordan Lewis and you do have to figure out who you cut for it, well, let's see. Who would you cut in that regard? Probably Deontay Thompson, although he has been pretty good for them. Maybe Bryce Butler can make Deontay Thompson a little redundant in that regard. T. Will would be the one that I would like. I would like to cut T. Will if I get him, Earl Thomas. Yes, Ninja Nuts, I know. I am also team keep Jordan Lewis. I'm simply stating, for whatever reason, they're not playing him much. And here's something else to consider. Rod Marinelli said today that through the first 2 games, the play calling on the defensive side of the ball has largely been Chris Richard. Now that is interesting to me because it suggests not only, I just ping on here, totally did, totes my goats, mute that. Not only does that indicate that that shows that he's got a lot more sway than we thought he did right now. I knew that he was going to be legit in terms of hyping guys up and in terms of working on their technique, and I love him as, at bare minimum, the next defensive coordinator, if not the next head coach. But I do recognize that he doesn't seem to like Jordan Lewis just from a physical tools standpoint. Jordan Lewis is a shorter corner with shorter arms, and that doesn't fit his mold. And Anthony Brown playing in the slot, even when Brown hasn't been great, although Brown, a lot of Brown struggles were through training camp, so Brown's been fairly solid through the first couple weeks. Maybe that's part of what's opening it up there and kind of reaffirming what he believes, and that's that the bigger corner with greater reach is more adept at handling some of this and making up for mistakes. But from a technique standpoint, Jordan Lewis all day over Anthony Brown. I'd love for them to find a way to get Lewis more involved. So we'll see what they end up doing with that. Seattle needs offensive weapons. I'd give them Bo and Hearns / T. Will. Well, Bo is on your practice squad, so I don't know if that's a move you would have to make. Hearns / T. Will, that would be, I don't know that anyone really cares about T. Will. I think Hearns would draw more interest in that regard, and if that's the move, that's the move, but we'll see what they end up doing with that. Again, 7 receivers is ridiculous that you have that many on your active roster. How long has it been since we had a good defense? I don't remember. It's been a minute. So let me touch on some of those stats here. Let me pull all that back up. So, as I was saying, the Cowboys. So here's a couple stats that paint the polar opposites the two units have been. The Cowboys' offense through 2 weeks, they're 4th to last in the NFL in points. Again, you get 8 and then you get 20. You're not exactly blowing people away. And in yards, they're 3rd to last. The Cowboys' defense, meanwhile, 3rd in the NFL in points, giving up 16 and then 13. And then in yards, they're 4th. So overall, they are either the 4th or 5th best defense in the league. Again, they're 2 weeks. Very, very small sample size. And I would say, Marcelo, on the Hearns front, also very small sample size. So can't really make a judgment yet on that front. But we'll see, especially with how bad week 1 was for the entire offense. And I think Dak made some horrendous defenses. I glanced at someone's comment. Horrendous decisions, and that caused him to make bad plays. Holding the ball, not just cutting it loose, staring at wide open receivers, and then trying to scramble only to be sacked and lose the ball. I could go on. The defense has been strong. I hesitate a little bit when trying to anoint the defense because obviously they've been pretty healthy to this point. Now Sean Lee's hamstring tweaked. We got about 28 snaps out of Leighton Vander Esch last game, and he wasn't bad. He really wasn't. So you just have to see what he can be with that. But I look at this and the identity of the team, and this is what I wrote about most recently for Dallas Sports Fanatic. The identity of the team seems clear. It's going to be built around its defense and its run game. It's going to be about the defense holding you down, the run game trying to chip away and wear you down as well. And then they're just going to have to rely on a handful of times per game that Dak Prescott can either beat you with his arm or his legs. Carolina, he could not do it. Made terrible reads. I thought the play calling was really bad. It didn't use him to his strengths at all. It was just pitiful play calling, I thought. Even though Dak failed to execute, you're not playing a guy to his strengths. You're not giving him the best chance to win and yourself the best chance to win by extension. So then you flip to week 2. Notice RPO's got him rolling out of the pocket. He goes 7 carries, which is one shy of his career high in that regard. Goes for a career high 45 yards rushing. And that's how you keep them on their heels. That's smart. You got to be willing to let Dak do that. Now, I will say I'd like him to slide a little bit more, but they're going to have to live with that. And the thing is, yeah, Dak only threw for 160 yards in both games, and he's got 1 touchdown, no picks or anything like that. He does have a fumble in week 1, but that's just how they are looking right now. And the thing about that for Dak, here's something to consider. If you look at the grand scheme of things, this is a tweet from Marcus Mosher with Bleacher Report. Actually, you know what? No, he's not with Bleacher Report anymore. He is with The Athletic. Through the first 34 games of Dak Prescott's career, he has a passer rating of 95.1. Only Kurt Warner, Russell Wilson, Dan Marino, and Aaron Rodgers have had better starts to their career. Now, you can dissect that in different ways to tell yourself different narratives. If you look at after week 1 of this season and the final 8 games of last season, you look at that and you're like, dude, you've been trashed through 9 games now. What does that say? And that's a fair point. 9 games is not a small sample size, but things right now, if last week against the Giants is any indicator of how they're going to use him moving forward, maybe it works. Now, in the meantime, you're going to have to rely on your defense to be a top 5 defense, and I think they have the potential to be that, but I admit I am worried to proclaim them to be that or anoint them to be that. One thing I've not seen much out of it in the defense, it's only forced 2 turnovers, both of which have been fumbles. Sack fumble on Eli Manning last week from Damian Wilson, and then going into the end zone, I want to say it was Leighton Vander Esch who forced the fumble of Christian McCaffrey in the first game. Maybe it's not Vander Esch. No, it wasn't Vander Esch. I can't remember who it was week 1, but someone forced not a strip sack, but a strip fumble of Christian McCaffrey, like inside the Dallas 5 in week 1. And so my concern from the defense is I'm not seeing turnovers. That's still the one thing that will separate this defense from being very good or just good to very good and great. If you can start creating turnovers, you can be a great defense. And if you find ways to score a handful of touchdowns in the season, like 4 defensive touchdowns in the season, then you're elite. Like, people forget 2005, the Bears, when they went to the Super Bowl with frickin' Rex Grossman as their quarterback, that was an absurdly good defense and special teams unit as well. The offense was just pretty trash aside from a good running back. So you just got to work with what you have, and I like what I see from the Cowboys defense. I see the parts and potential there, but I'm really reluctant to just say, oh, there you go, that's the whole identity, and that's going to carry everything. It's going to have to carry it as far as it can, but whether it can carry Dallas as the primary option of their game plan each week to try and propel them back into the playoffs, that's going to be a tough deal. So it's too early to say for that, but I do really like the improvement I see out of the defense. April Staten, I agree on the Panthers game. Yes, didn't use him properly. Not a read in the pocket QB. I agree. Stevie Mac, what's up? Flipping back to, oh man, what was the old commercial? Was that 7-Up? I was like, what's up? I'm not doing the full thing, but yeah. What's up, Stevie? So, for this game, the challenges that Dallas is going to have, you're going to have Dak is going to have to deal with Bobby Wagner, linebacker for Seahawks. Now he's not part of the Legion of Boom because the Legion of Boom was the back end of that defense, the defensive backs. But Wagner's no slouch, man. Wagner's a good linebacker for sure. So Dak's going to have to deal with him. You're going to have Zeke have to deal with him as well. And then you're going to have to figure out what do you do around Earl Thomas, because if you're Dallas, you really need to try and steal this win. And I think they can, but right now Seattle is a 1.5-point favorite despite being 0-2. And if you force Seattle to go 0-3, they might have to really reevaluate their season. And if they're reevaluating their season, maybe they're willing to look at, you know what, Earl Thomas doesn't want to be here anyway. We're clearly not ready to do anything this year. Maybe we do go ahead and trade Earl to Dallas for a second rounder and maybe like a player. So we'll see. Bobby Wagner is banged up, so might be a little bit limited. It could be. I mean, that's the other thing that the Cowboys kind of have going for them is that Seattle is banged up. Russell Wilson is banged up as well. Let me see. I had something before where I was looking at it. 2-1 would be nice. 2-1. Oh, you're talking about the Cowboys record. I was like, 2-1. Are you talking about a Dallas giving up a second and a first? I was like, no. Let's not go there. Yeah, 2-1. If Cowboys moved to 2-1, that would be very nice. I would be very happy with that. And you're gonna have to do that. To me, I always look at it this way, and even before the Travis Frederick revelation of his illness and everything, I kept pointing to they face the NFC South this year, which means Carolina, Atlanta, New Orleans, Tampa Bay. That's a damn tough division to have to go against. 3 of those teams made the playoffs last year, and oh, by the way, the one that didn't is freaking lighting the league on fire behind Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's walking up to press conferences after the game like Conor McGregor. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. But I said you got to win 3 of those 4. And dropping the one, just for tiebreaker scenarios. That was my belief. Now, Philadelphia doesn't look as good right now as I projected them to be. But they now have Wentz back, so we'll see what he looks like post-injury. And real talk, I think those Eagles defensive backs can be had. I do. But nevertheless, if Dallas has to come down to a tiebreaker scenario, you got to win 3 of those 4 against the NFC South. And they already lost 1 to the Panthers, who I thought was, I would have told you, one of the 2 easier to get. I would have said them in Tampa Bay. And then I would have said you just got to find a way to win 1 against either Atlanta or New Orleans. Now, I think you're at Atlanta again this year. Are they? I don't remember if it's home or away. Let me pull up the schedule. But I'm quite certain that the other game, the Saints game, is at Dallas, which is at least something. Going to New Orleans is never an easy game, even when they're not that great. I do think Wentz will be rusty as well, but you just got to see. So Dallas will be at Atlanta again. SOB. So Dallas has Tampa Bay and New Orleans at home in that division. I say they got to find a way to win 3 out of the 4 just to make sure they don't have to worry about tiebreaker scenarios, because that was the best division in football last year. So for the Cowboys Seahawks, you got your matchup. How Zeke can hold up against guys like Wagner. And then what Dak can do as far as the passing game, moving the ball down the field. How much salt in the wound would it be if Earl Thomas gets like a pick or 2 in this game and then we don't get the trade or something like that? That would just be so salt in the wound for that whole thing. It would be insane. Yeah, we play at Atlanta. I was checking next year's free agency offensive-wise. The only solid player there is Golden Tate, Inua from the Jets, Jesse James, and Jared Cook. Well, look at it this way. Dallas doesn't typically do a lot of their building through free agency. At least they're substantial pieces. They're going to pay their guys from within. They're going to have to, DeMarcus Lawrence is killing it right now, man. His sack numbers, I think they're just 3. I think he's at 3 sacks through 2 games. That's not going to blow you away, although it's quite nice. His tackles for loss are ridiculous right now. He's gonna command, if he keeps this up for the whole year, he's gonna command north of $20 million, and Dallas can afford it, but that's a major backfire for them if that happens, because they could have had him at $17.5 million a year if they had signed him this year instead of franchising him. I think they revenge game. Yeah, no, it is a revenge game, and that was one of the things I mentioned as well, is that last year, if you look at one game where everything went wrong last year for the season, it was Atlanta. It was the week after they beat down the Chiefs at home, and they looked phenomenal. The Chiefs were saying, that looks like the best team we've played all year. And the Chiefs were not slouches that year, at least for the start of the year. They fell off by the end of the year. But they started off red hot. And, I mean, they opened the year kicking the snot out of New England. So it's just one of those things where you got to see how they come into it. But Atlanta, that everything went wrong in Atlanta, and Dak never recovered, and the offense as a whole never recovered. So we'll see. I'm also interested to see how Zeke does in this game, not just because of the matchup I already mentioned, but specifically because Zeke has 4 games in his career where he has run for fewer than 80 yards. All 4 have come in the first 2 weeks of a season, whether it was his rookie year, last year, and if you want last year's example, that's the Denver game, obviously, and now both weeks this year. I think because he got nothing in the preseason in the way of work, and you can't really simulate game situations in practice when guys aren't really hitting you, then he's probably in terms of physical shape, this is probably the moment when he's ready to put everything together and come out and look like the Zeke we expect. Now, he ran hard last game, but it's still one of those things that it wasn't quite there, wasn't quite all together the way that you would like to see. So that's something to keep an eye out for. I think Zeke will break out. I think the offense will move more smoothly when he does reach that next gear, and it usually takes him 2 to 3 games to get going there. Here's a fun fact from Bobby Belt. It says, good time to remind folks that Dallas has only played 9 regular season games since 2016 in which Sean Lee, DeMarcus Lawrence, and David Irving all play at least 20% of defensive snaps. They are 9-0 in those games. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful, but basically it's Sean Lee, your quarterback of the defense, and then your 2 shop-wrecking defensive linemen. And if you got all of them healthy for at least 20% of the defensive snaps of the game, Cowboys are 9-0. Now, I don't know math all that great, but I feel like 100% percentage win, probably pretty good. Apparently, I don't know English that well either. Oh man, yeah, they're gonna have to figure that out. And here's the thing too. They never had Randy Gregory in any of those either. I don't want to hype up Randy Gregory like he's the next coming of anything. I don't even know day-to-day, week-to-week where we're looking at with him and his ability to be available. But I will tell you this. With the defensive line like it is, against New York, Dallas had 6 sacks from 6 different players. And just the depth alone and the exotic looks that the defense is bringing, like throwing slot blitzes and things like that, that's all going to help Randy Gregory get some really good looks. And I do think he will be able to. I don't know that he's a war daddy. Maybe he could be in time if he ever stayed on the field long enough. But I do think that it sets him up in a way where he can wreck serious shop alongside guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, David Irving, so on and so forth. So interesting to see for sure. Cat. Another unrelated factoid here. Cowboys become the first pro sports team valued at $5 billion with a B. Now, let me tell you all the reasons I honestly don't care. I view it this way. Like, that's cool. Like, oh, most valuable sports franchise in the world. Awesome. That's been the case for a while. Here's what I view, though. You got 2 playoff wins in like 25 years. No conference championship game appearances, let alone Super Bowls. And you make a lot of, I mean, historically, I think they're getting better at some of their decision making as far as personnel and things like that, but you've made a lot of bizarre decisions. So why do I care that they're worth so much money? Is it just reaffirmed like, oh, America's team? Okay, cool. Awesome. I care more about on the field and them winning. It's kind of like how I viewed when All or Nothing gave us the revelation of how often and how much Jason Garrett curses. My answer was, who cares? He could cuss every other curse word. He could be R2-D2 out there, and literally everything he says is censored. Beeps and boops. I don't care. Like, I really, really don't. All I care about is wins and losses. What do you do on the field? Are you a good coach? Are you an advantage? In all of Garrett's cases, I view that as to no. And Jerry Jones' case, the Jones family is not selling the team anytime soon. And even if they did, do I really care that they could get apparently at least $5 billion for the team? No. Like, it doesn't matter to me that they can get that kind of money. They're already set. He's already a billionaire. Who cares? All I care about is wins and losses. So, the number 2 team for the record as far as NFL teams, I think, was the Patriots at like $3.8 billion. Let's be real. I'd rather be the team worth $3.8 billion with 5 Super Bowls, all in at least the 2000s, the 2000s and onward. I mean, come on, man. So, interesting factoid, but I wanted to be real with that. Maybe some people will disagree with me and they'll say, hey, that's awesome. That just reaffirms our identity on this stage. I mean, whatever works for you. Me personally, they could be worth $1.95, and all I care about is if they win or lose on Sunday or Monday or Thursday, or the weird time it's a Saturday that sometimes happens. I digress. Rico is the man, says Save Prime Time. Yes, sir. So real talk here. Rico should have had, at bare minimum, a touchdown against the Giants. Dak had a bad throw in the end zone there, where he overthrows a 6'7" or 6'8", 285 tight end in the back of the end zone who's wide open. That was bad, and Dak missed another one along the sideline. I think that one at least goes off Rico's hands. The end zone one was so high, Rico couldn't even do anything with it. He's like, bro, what the hell? So, Rico, man, he might not be a polished route runner. He's not. He might not be a great blocker with regard to understanding assignments. But here's the thing. He's 6'7", 285. If you put him in the way of somebody, he's a hard dude to either A, push around, or B, get around. So there's your blocking fix right there. As far as the end zone, who cares if he's not a polished route runner? He's Baylor's all-time leading rebounder, and he's a dude who was he could have probably made it on some NBA G League team, and eventually got a crack at the NBA if he really had worked at it. But he's got ability to do it. They just need to utilize him better. And, I point to when people say, like, oh, he's not a great route runner. Okay, I mean, the route he ran in the end zone was great, but if he's not a great route runner, then why did it work all those years with Dez, who we also know wasn't a great route runner? With Dez, it was, he didn't always run the routes as precisely as he should or create the separation he needed, but he was so athletic and could go up and beat anybody for a jump ball. I'm sitting here thinking, 6'7", a D1 college program's all-time leader in rebounds. That sounds like a recipe for jump balls. And he's got hands too, man. That's the thing. He's had one-handed catches in training camp and stuff. So I don't get it. Maybe they're finally figuring it out. Frankly, if there's one tight end, because they got 4 tight ends right now on the roster too. That's the other absurd thing. They don't have anyone who's a tight end 1. They got like a borderline 2 with Rico, and then the rest are like 3s. I think Dalton Schultz will be good, but honestly, right now of the tight ends, he is far and away the clear, obvious, not ready for the main roster guy. I think that if they did cut him, he would slip by and end up on their practice squad. That would be better. It would give you another roster spot for, a more vital guy, because you're only really playing Jarwin and Swaim anyway on Sundays. Swaim is your starter. He's been forgettable. Jarwin, the only thing I've seen him do is botch the onside recovery against New York. So, all right, cool. I look at it and I say, there you go. Rico can at least make those plays. If you really think if you really think that Swaim is your guy to block, fine. Rico can do a little bit of blocking, and he can give you at least a red zone monster. Why not? So that's what I want to see. I want to see them open that up, especially if you're talking about all through training camp. This offense struggled most mightily in the red zone. Like, yo, look what you got. You got a dude with physical tools that every other team this side of New England is like, dude, I would kill to have that. Okay, not every other team. There are other teams that have similar type molds and, other elite tight end athletes, but you get my point. Cut fumbler Jarwin. I wouldn't hate that either, but Jarwin, I think, can at least contribute to you right now. I don't think Schultz is going to be ready to contribute at all this year, which is why I think he would probably, even though he's a 4th rounder and you're always a little scared cutting a guy, like, oh, can we sneak him to the practice squad? Yeah, I mean, you never know, but we'll see. DDP, Baker Mayfield is balling out. That's what I like to hear. That's my dude. That is my dude. Take a peek at the score and stat line right, Chiaffa, Sir Baker of Mayfield. 14-14. I dig it. They were down 14-0, right? Baker, 11 of 15, 141, 9.5 a pop. Only sacked once. No touchdowns, no interceptions. I'll take it. I'll take it. I like it. ATX the Great. What's up? Cowboys should try to get Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown's not going to be available. I know he had the whole Instagram spat thing where a fan, or not a fan, no. Was it Twitter? It was like a former Steelers PR person or something like that make some comment about, oh, you should just be thankful to Ben and all that because Ben makes him or something. And he's like, trade me and find out. Steelers are 0-2. They got their butt handed to them against Pat Mahomes and a freakishly good-looking right now Kansas City offense. And the whole Le'Veon thing's going on. That locker room is a circus right now. Le'Veon's own offensive linemen are taking shots at him. And I'm sitting here like, dude, that's like the one thing you don't do. You don't count your guys' money. Like, he's literally over here like, he makes twice as much as me, 7 times as much as this guy. Like, what are you doing? That's not how this works. It's like a brotherhood, man. It's business. Blame ownership for the money situation. He's the one risking everything. He gets hurt playing this year. He has no security moving forward, and he'll never see anything else. Like, that's just the harsh reality of the NFL. Don't hate the dude. Hate the game. DDP, would you have sold the farm too to get Baker? Would I have sold the farm? No, man. I would not have sold the farm to get Baker. Here's the thing. I love Baker Mayfield. I do. I do have some questions about whether he can translate long-term as an NFL quarterback. But as far as the kid's moxie and as far as his arm talent and accuracy, I love everything I see there. I just have some questions regarding that, and where he was always going to go in the draft was always going to be way too rich for my blood. If something went amiss and he found himself like in round 2, Dallas still wouldn't have done it, but I would have been like, ooh, do I want to go down this road? If it's Madden, I'm building my own roster, probably. But yeah, I don't sell the farm for Baker as much as I love the dude. Let's see. I saw someone mention something about Schultz. Stevie, here we go. Should at least play Schultz a game or 2 before you cut him. Jarwin can miss time after what he did last week. Might as well see what he can do in real game. The thing with Schultz is kind of like similar, I should say, to what the situation is with Connor Williams. He's just getting overpowered right now. He doesn't have the size, and the game seems fast for him now. In Williams' case, Williams was already projected as a first rounder for a lot of teams, including Dallas. And I think he's so technically sound, and he's sandwiched between Tyron Smith and right now, in this case, Joe Looney, who, by the way, has been fantastic through 2 games. Hasn't given up a pressure yet, I believe. And last week, to Connor Williams' credit, gave up 0 pressures as well after giving up 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 4 quarterback hits against Carolina. He was much better this past week. So he's benefiting some just from who he's surrounded by, but he's playing better as well, and I think he can make up for it because of how technically sound he is and because of the help he gets. Schultz, I don't think, has shown anything to that quality yet, and from everything I've heard from a on-field production and training camp and all that, he was far and away the 4th tight end. And that's why he hasn't even been dressing out. Even though he's on the 53, he's not on the game day 46-man roster. Cowboys should try and get Antonio Brown. Oh, I already answered that. Is it possible? No. Steelers aren't going to trade him, and he's even said he was just venting. I think he's a diva. He's a phenomenal diva. But nevertheless, I don't see Pittsburgh giving him up for anything, and I don't see Dallas being able to make any run at that. But would I love for Dallas to have an elite wide receiver, let alone one who's elite because of his route running ability? Hell yes. Hell yes, I would love for that. I think next year in the draft, Dallas's top priority should be wide receiver. I mean, and if it's not your first round look, hell, take a look at in like round 2, Hakeem Butler from Iowa State. Dude's Des Bryant-esque, not esque. Isk-esque. Let's see here. Let me guys know if you got any questions here. Fire off some questions down here in the chat. I'll keep cycling through everything I got right here in front of me. Let's see. So for the game, I'm getting a knockoff Looney jersey. Very nice, April. I dig it. Let's see here. This is one of the rare shows where I'm actually not wearing a Dallas Prospect shirt right now. I'm wearing a different shirt. Let me actually see what I'm doing here. Stay humble or be humbled. Nice message for everyone, I think. But yeah, I think that I was gonna say one thing I want to start doing is I want to start doing some kind of giveaway every now and then on my streams. What's up, Gabriel? Retracted your message, so I don't know what you said. But what's up? I want to start doing some kind of giveaway during the streams every now and then, maybe once a month or something like that. And I don't even know how I would do that or when I would figure out what shows or whatever to do it, because I do like minimum 3 shows a week. I do a Big 12 college football kind of roundup on Sunday late morning, early afternoon. And then I got Mavs Fast Break on Sundays. Then I do 2 Cowboy ones. I do the preview show on Thursdays, this one, and the day after, which is tentatively also called Cowboys Roundup. So I got 4 shows a week, so I'd have to figure out how that would work. But the idea is I would do giveaways for some Dallas Prospect merch and figure all that out, how I want to go about that. I just realized, didn't even hear that. My drop. Yeah. But yeah, go with that regard. Something like Dallas Prospect merch, whether it's t-shirts or I'm going to try and roll out some hats, but those are a little more tricky for how I go about it. Buddy Johnson, DDP, do you believe Jordan Lewis gets traded to Seattle for Earl Thomas 3? Straight up, hell no. Could he be part of a deal? Maybe. Is he my preferred guy I'd lose? No. I'd rather give up the 2 and like a conditional 5 Dallas doesn't draft well in the 5th round the last few years. 4th round, they do very well. 5th round, they've been pretty, the last few years. So if I'm upping my ante to them instead of giving up Jordan Lewis, who I like a lot and who I think, if nothing else, has great depth right now. If he's not winning the starting job, he's right there. What's the word I'm looking for? A hair behind it, basically. I'd rather give up a 2 and a 5 because you're not drafting well at the 5 spot anyway, and you've already said that you think he's worth a 2. Let's see. April, who will emerge as the punt returner? Doesn't seem to be established yet. The punt returner is Tavon Austin. The kickoff returner is Deontay Thompson, is how it's been thus far. I haven't heard anything on if that's changing, but that's what we're looking at right now. And I think that's actually a pretty good setup. You're getting your speed guys out there, and, with his good, Tavon Austin is a Swiss Army knife. There's no doubting that. He had 3 touches last week for 94 yards, 64 in the first pop, and then around for like 17 yards, and then, like I said, I'm not a math guy, whatever he got on the last reception. But that kind of got the offense jump-started again, which wound up being that beautiful long drive they had. I think that they punched in to the end zone for the secure touchdown to go up 20-3 at that point. OG Kush. What's up, DDP? What are we talking about? Well, we've been talking about the Cowboys-Seahawks preview for Thursday. I almost just said Thursday. For Sunday at 3:30. And we talked a little bit about the Cowboys being, according to the latest Forbes report, worth $5 billion. Talked a little bit about the potential of Earl Thomas and what it would mean potentially if there's still a chance to acquire him after this game. That's all been discussed, as well as why this channel is awesome and everyone should subscribe now. I mean, I think someone floated that out there. That was like April or something. Just playing. But yeah, and now I'm just kind of fielding questions. So keeping a cursory eye on my dude Baker Mayfield over here in this game. From afar, I'm not actually watching the game. I just got the stats up in front of me here. 4th quarter, down 17-14. All right. So, if you guys got questions, fire away. I've been going about an hour. I'll probably go about another 10 minutes probably. So, if you guys got questions, lay them on me. If you want to show some love, like the video, share it, subscribe. Well, I ask those things anyway. But would be much appreciated. Closing in on 1,300 subs. I've been grinding for that for a while. Why didn't we make a move for G? I assume G is Josh Gordon. So the reason they didn't make a move for Josh Gordon, I think there are a couple things to it. Yeah, Gordon. I think there are a couple different factors to that. I think it was, one, the dude is already in a Randy Gregory situation. He's missed more time than Randy Gregory. I think he's missed something like 42 of the last 63 games or something like that, or maybe even more than that. I don't know. He's missed a ton. He's missed more time than Gregory. He's 1 strike away from a lifetime ban like Gregory. And if he had gotten cut in the off season and Dallas could have picked him up and kind of worked him into their system and try to really bring him along at a speed that they feel more comfortable with, especially given all of his kind of substance issues he's had, let's just say, I think they would have gone a lot more aggressively for him. And they didn't, because he came available in the middle of the week. Now, a conditional 5th that says if he doesn't play at least 10 games, New England gets back a late round pick from Cleveland, that's a great deal, man. I would have loved to do that. But because of the other circumstances, Dallas didn't want to bite it. And so instead, they brought in Bryce Butler. With Butler, I think it's a step up for the receiving core. I certainly don't think it hurts them, but it's not the electric move that adding a Josh Gordon would be. If you could tell me right now that I could have added Josh Gordon and know that I have him at least for the rest of this year, no issues off the field, no failed drug tests or trips back to rehab or anything like that, I would have taken it. Hell yes. Conditional 5th. I said this a minute ago. Dallas has not picked well in the 5th round in recent years. as good as they've been lately in general in the draft, the 5th round has not been kind to them. So they didn't do it because they're Dallas and they're ultra conservative, and they said, hey, we already got one guy in Randy Gregory who's in a similar boat. Don't really want to have 2 of them. And, oh, yeah, we seem to have like every year David Irving now getting suspended for something. This year it is substance abuse. Last year it was PEDs and so on and so forth. So I think they just looked at it and were like, yeah, we got enough of that going on, and not being able to bring him into our system and, you know, kind of integrate him the way we want and the way that we feel more comfortable. We're just going to keep our distance. Buddy Johnson, DDP, I don't want to Jordan Lewis because what if Anthony Brown waffles? Oh, don't want to trade Jordan Lewis. Yeah, no, I agree. I don't want to trade Jordan Lewis either. I'm frustrated he's only gotten 1 snap in 2 weeks, and I don't know what really Dallas does to change that or to fix that. All I can say is that, you know, Chris Richard's been doing pretty much all the defensive play calling the last 2 weeks. And you have noticed Dallas's defense has been more exotic and more aggressive, especially in the blitzing capacity. And that's why I kind of already realized this was what was up, even before it was announced today, I think it was, or maybe it was yesterday, that was the case. I was already looking at it, and I was like, Rod Marinelli never blitzes, and we've been pretty blitz happy, especially last week. And damn sure is. That is exactly what's going on. Chris Richard is basically taking over the play calling the first 2 weeks, and look where the defense is right now. We're looking at this defense like, this is nice. This looks like it could be a really, really good defense. I like it. It's a top 5 defense right now. If they can add some turnovers into their game, particularly interceptions, whoo. That's the thing, man. Byron Jones has been, according to Pro Football Focus, the second best corner in the league thus far. He's allowed, what was it, against New York, 1 completion for no yards against New York. I think the caveat might have been instead of the season, instead of the season, it was just last week perhaps, but it's basically the difference of 1 game versus 2. So yeah, he gave up 1 completion for 5 yards last week. With him and Cheeto sharing responsibility guarding Odell Beckham, the highest paid receiver in the league, they held him to, he was targeted 9 times, but they held him to 4 catches for 51 yards, and 17 of those yards, his longest reception of the game, came on that final garbage time drive that got New York into field goal range after they recovered the onside, after Blake Jarwin handed them the onside kick. So something to say there. The Cowboys defense, particularly the secondary, is balling out. Anthony Brown through 2 weeks is also projected very well according to Pro Football Focus. So I still lean more on Jordan Lewis because I know he's, from a technical savvy standpoint, a better technique player. And he's also a guy who's got more dog in him, I think. I think Brown, if you play him in the slot, he can be good. He was good as a rookie in the slot. He's been pretty solid as in the slot again this year. Last year they moved him outside and he got exposed. So we'll see what it is, but I think generally he's going to do okay there. I just think Jordan Lewis can do just as much, if not better, than him. The difference is Chris Richard sees that Anthony fits his mold better as far as a bigger frame, longer arms, whereas Jordan Lewis is shorter with shorter arms. So even though he's got all the technical savvy in the world, they tend to lean, they being Chris Richard, tends to lean for Anthony Brown to get the reps instead. We need to keep Lewis. Brown can be traded. I agree, but we'll see what they do. Again, 1 snap so far for Jordan Lewis. If you're telling me right now Earl Thomas can be ours after this game if we just give him a second and Jordan Lewis, I might consider that, because I'm looking at this defense saying this defense can be really, really good. And as far as re-upping Earl on a new deal, I'd probably give him $12 million a year and don't think twice about it. They've got all the money they need moving forward. They finally have managed the cap in a way where they can do something, and that gives them hope. That gives them a chance. But we'll see. Guys, I'm going to take 3 more questions, If you guys got them, hit me with 3 questions, and then I'm going to wrap the show here. I've been going a little over an hour, and I got some more work I got to do for the day job after this. Stevie Mack, do you think they'll attempt to switch things up with the receivers so they can actually see who gets open, who gets open and who needs to go? Here's the thing. I don't think they love any one receiver they have. Maybe Cole. I think they like the guys they have okay, and they I feel like they value them all kind of relatively evenly. But that's not to say there's anyone they love. So that makes it easier for Dak to say, all right, well, this guy's got he's open, he's got the better matchup or whatever, and he goes with the ball where he needs to. But would they be better off having a number 1 receiver? Yeah, they're trying to sell it on, hey, we don't need a number 1 receiver. In fact, we don't want a number 1 receiver. We're good with all these guys that are possession receivers and blah blah blah. No, you're not. Stop being ridiculous, guys. If you could have like an Antonio Brown, or in the offseason a Josh Gordon who's fully reinstated, or a Julio Jones, or one of these guys, hell, some of these young kids, if you could have had a Connor Kupp or something like that from the Rams, you're doing it. You're doing it, and you're not thinking twice about it. Tyreek Hill's got the domestic violence stuff, and that's got some more recent drama here because of Greg Hardy, but that and Zeke, of course, but the Zeke is at least alleged. But yeah, I don't know, man. I view it as they clearly want it, like a star wide receiver. They just don't have a quick guy they can throw in, and so they're just kind of stunting right now, like, we're so good with all these guys, we don't even need it. Let's see. They're showing how good he can be. Let Lewis stay fresh. Gallup will be one. Just give him time. No, I agree. When they drafted Gallup, pick 81, round 3 this year, I said by the end of the year he will be the new number 1. Now, some people asserted he'll get there earlier. I think through 2 games he's got 1 catch for 5 yards. I'm not passing judgment. He's a rookie, and a rookie not first-round pick, so it's not shocking to me in the least that he's taking some time to adjust and to adapt. But I do view that by the end of the year, he will be, from an ability standpoint, he's a nuanced route runner. Once the game slows down a little bit for him, he will be a very good receiver. I don't know if he'll ever be like a Pro Bowl receiver, but he'll be a very good receiver for this offense for years to come, I think. He's got a way of getting open, even though he's not blazing fast. So nuanced in his route running and just understanding of how to create space that in training camp, even with these corners, he could get deep on anybody pretty much anytime he wanted. And Dak definitely was building a rapport with him in training camp and finding him early and often. So I think you will start to see him emerge, but we're going to have to be a little bit patient. You're right about that. DDP, to me, the Eagles can have Blake Jarwin. He sucks at kick returning. Oh, you talking about Blake Jarwin for the onside kick hands team where he botched that and gave the ball back to the Giants? Yeah, that wasn't great. that was one of the ugliest things I saw, and I was like, he's on your hands team, huh? I don't know who I would have put there instead, because I don't feel great about the hands of any of our tight ends. Maybe Rico, but that's a different type of catch than Rico's typically asked to make, so I don't know. Mark Castillo, have you heard anything about Irving? He's working out somewhere. Don't know what he's at shape. Irving is actually back at the Star. He's back at the facility and working out with the Cowboys. The NFL is kind of silently, low-key lessening its harshness on substance abuse-related suspensions, because the league typically would say, hey, you're gone, you're not around the team at all until your suspension's up, and then the guy gets back and you don't know what you're getting when he comes back in. That apparently hasn't been the case. He's been back with the team for a week. It was only the first week of the season they kept him away, so he's been back at the Star working out with the team. I don't think he's practicing, but he is around the facility and working with guys, and it sounds like he's in pretty good shape. So I'm encouraged. I think kind of like last year, he'll hit the ground running when he gets back. Last year, his first game back, or his first 2 games back or something, he had like 4 sacks. The guy had 7 sacks in 8 games last year. Unfortunately, he only played 8 games last year. Missed the first 4 with the PED suspension and the last 4 with a concussion. Oh, and Wilson will be new. The slot. Seattle or Giants O-line, asks Hirsch. Are you asking me which is better or which I'd rather have? I think Seattle is more equipped to fix its offensive line this season than New York is. Even though Seattle's given up the most sacks so far, they had to go against the Bears defense, which is fierce. They're leading the league in sacks right now, 1 ahead of the Cowboys at 10 versus Dallas's 9. But when I look at Seattle's offensive line, it's not a great one by any means, but I feel like part of what's been so bad through the first couple weeks has just been from a more technical side, and I think that can be corrected. Whereas New York, they still got like Eric Flowers in there starting right tackle, and you look at stuff like that and you're like, dude, I don't even know if he should be starting somewhere in the league, let alone, at right tackle. So we'll see. But if I had to say which one I think is better, I think Seattle's is better. But, it's all about matchups. You never know. D-Law could go off, or maybe Dallas has a good... here's the thing. It's Chris Richard calling the plays. He's going home to Seattle. He knows exactly what they like to do. He's literally done this for how many years against Russell Wilson in practice? So if there's anyone who should know exactly how to take away... Now, you could say that goes the other way a little bit as well, because obviously Russell Wilson has seen Chris Richard-led defenses before. But I tend to think Seattle doesn't have the playmakers right now, and Russell Wilson's not even 100% either. I think he's dealing with an ankle injury or something. So, or was it hamstring? It was something like that. But he's not 100% either, and as a result, I tend to say advantage Chris Richard right now. How do we slow down Wilson for the game? Well, if he's got... So Wilson is one of the more mobile quarterbacks in the league, right? He's not Cam in terms of size, but Russell Wilson has... We talk like we got excited with Dak running the ball 7 times last week, right? Russell Wilson has like... I heard the stat earlier this week. It's like games in which he runs at least 7 times. He's got like 40 of them in his career where he's run at least 7 times. Dak has 2 times he's run 7, and 1 time he ran 8. So Dallas doesn't run anywhere near as often as Russell Wilson does. And the only guy that runs more than Russell Wilson right now as a starter in the league would probably be Cam Newton. And that's really it. Now Russ he's shiftier and he's quicker than Cam. He's more a magician, but it's still one of those things that I think if he's got any kind of leg issue, Dallas should have a good shot at keeping him under control this week. Here's the thing. Dallas kept him under control for the most part at Dallas last year. They really did. That was a winnable game for Dallas, and it took Dan Bailey melting down because of him and his recovery. By the way, he signed with the Vikings finally, so good for him. That's the best place he could go as far as a shot at winning a Super Bowl potentially. And anytime a beloved Cowboy leaves, I always wish the best for him. I always say if Dez does land somewhere this season, I hope he has a chance at doing that. But that's a whole different can of worms for a different day on that discussion. So I think Dallas, they just need to try and keep him contained, keep him inside the pocket and collapse it. Don't bum rush out the side and force him out of the pocket, because I think he's, if healthy, deadly out of the pocket. So that's what Dallas is going to have to do. Now, I think Doug Baldwin's out as well for Seattle, so that's going to be an advantage. You still got to worry a little bit about like a Tyler Lockett, but I feel pretty good about this matchup. I do. I really do. I think this is probably going to be something like a 23-17 win for Dallas. DDP, do you think we'll get 7 sacks against the Seahawks? I think it's possible, but I'm guessing. I'm going to say 5 sacks. 5. 7 would be sweet. I'd take 7. Wilson is one of the slippier quarterbacks in the league. Slipperier. That's the one. Dez will be back. Yeah, he should be, but it's weird that we're now in week 3. Games are being played, and he still hasn't signed. He turned down his deal for 3 for $21 from Baltimore before the draft. Then he turned down a deal with the Browns. And nothing's really being talked about right now. He's got the ability. He should be back. But the longer it goes, the less likely it is for him to come back. And I don't know. He's got a lot left in the tank. I don't know what the deal is. If he's just waiting to call his shot, call it. You're healthy, right? Call it. Taco is so big when he pulls pursuit. QBs can't look past him. True. Taco has been playing pretty well for Dallas this year. He got a sack last game as well, and pretty much was unblocked on that one. If the Giants signed Chaz Green, I wouldn't even know what to say because I'd be so dumbfounded. Yeah, I agree with that, absolutely. But we'll see what happens with that. They'll have to make some kind of adjustment. And then he went to Beyonce concert with Jerry. Yeah, Dez. Yeah. I don't know what's going on. It definitely made things strange and interesting for a little bit with that. In fact, he was the one who advised Bryce Butler to go back to Dallas, interestingly enough. Hirsch, Damian Wilson went off last week. Wilson has been balling out. I'm impressed with what I've seen from Damian Wilson for sure. Again, small sample size, but I like it. So, I think that's going to wrap up my time, guys. Check us out on Facebook, The Dallas Prospect. We're on Twitter as well, at Dallas Prospect. I'm trying to get more active back on Twitter, live tweeting and doing all of that throughout the games now. Check out my writing on DallasSportsFanatic.com. It also finds its way typically later that same day or the next day to the DallasProspect.com. Keep an eye out for my stuff on Bleacher Report. It crops up there every now and then as well. So keep an eye out on all of that. Yes, Gale, I saw that. Mavs Media Day is tomorrow. I am very interested in that as well on a different subject. Marcelo, where's Big Game James? I think he had a schedule conflict tonight. So we'll get all that going and we'll get a show with all of us again. But appreciate you guys. Check us out if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. If you want to support us, tons of options. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, all that's on the table. So get us to 1,300. I think we're at like $12.93, something like that right now. So check it out. If you want to talk other stuff here, I got other shows during the week as well. College football's Big 12 football roundup on Sundays. Mavs Fast Break. I got both these shows. Lost a sub. Come on, guys. I'm kidding. But check it out. And until next time, guys, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Salute.